Hello. No-dig gardening is a technique of gardening which has been pioneered over the last decade by a chap called Charles Dowding. And this is an introduction to no-dig gardening, but I would urge you, if you want to do a deep dive into the subject and find out a lot more about it, to visit Charles Dowding's channel on YouTube. Now, they say there's nothing new under the sun, but he really has got a way of bringing it all together, and his style of presentation is very easy to watch. So visit Charles Dowding's channel if you want to know a lot more about no-dig gardening. I'll put a link to his channel in the description box below this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a no-dig veg plot using Charles Dowding's methods. And I'm also going to talk to you about the benefits, or the perceived benefits, of no-dig gardening, which Charles Dowding has been pioneering for over 10 years. And you will notice throughout this video that I have not stopped digging yet. And throughout this video, I will not stop digging, because the first thing I learnt about no-dig gardening is that it's not about not digging. But first things first, let me put my hat on, because it's a blazing hot, sunny June day, and I don't want to burn the top of my head and the top of my ears. And if you've been watching my videos, my YouTube channel, you'll recognise this plot as the wildlife pond, which I'm digging by hand. And I've already mentioned that the soil from in here is going to be used in a veg plot over there in the other corner of the garden. Now, this soil is good topsoil, and it's very sandy and well drained. So I'm going to have to enrich this soil with some manure. Unfortunately, my neighbours has some ponies, so I'm going to go down there and borrow some of his manure and show you the ponies in a moment. But before we get started on manure, let me show you what I've already done. And I've loaded a barrow full of good topsoil there, and I'll take it over to the other corner of the garden now and show you the ground as I've prepared it. And this is what I prepared earlier. So what you do when you're preparing a no-dig veg plot is you choose your plot, and I've chosen this plot already because this is going to be the productive area of my garden over here near the fruit trees. The wildlife pond is in the distance behind me. So I've chosen the area and I've staked it out so that I know the perimeter, and I've laid on top of that some cardboard. But before I've laid it down, I've mown the grass as short as possible. So here we have a grassy patch, mown very short, covered in cardboard, which is overlapped. And the cardboard is to prevent the light getting to the grass below. And that will help to kill the grass and also kill any weeds that are in the grass. And on top of that now, I'm going to start piling soil. I need this veg plot because I've already started growing some veg in a mini veg plot in the compound at the rear of my garage, and they've become quite big quite quickly, and they've already outgrown the raised beds which I've made, so they're all going to be brought down here. Eventually this soil will be about 30 centimetres deep, and I will plant directly into it. Let's get back to the theory and the thought behind no-dig gardening, and I'll continue that discussion back over at the wildlife pond. So, if no-dig gardening is not about not digging, what is it about? Well, let me get a piece of turf and demonstrate the theory behind no-dig gardening. This is quite dry because we've had a run of dry weather, but no-dig gardening is about protecting this, the existing soil ecosystem. Because the theory is, if you don't dig into it, you don't disturb into this. Because effectively this is already a living, breathing organism. It's full of beetles and worms and fungus and microorganisms, and they're already living as a mini ecosystem there. If you leave it in place, it survives and does great work. Merely by digging it and turning it over, you're effectively killing the ecosystem. So the theory about no-dig gardening is really about leaving that in place, putting soil on top of it and allowing that to permeate up through that layer of cardboard into the soil above, bringing with it the life. And I read somewhere that in 1 gram of soil there can be up to 1 billion microorganisms. 1 billion, think of that. So by leaving it in place, you're allowing all that life that already exists in the earth to continue living. And whilst I'm digging, let me tell you about these socks, because there's a slightly heartwarming story behind these socks. I had an email this week from the previous owners of Rose Cottage, who are probably watching this video. So hello, David and Sylvia. I found these socks tucked into a crevice in the corner of one of the bedrooms as a draft excluder, and they were too good to throw away, so I put them in the wash and now I'm wearing them. So I'm wearing these socks as a tribute to you, David and Sylvia. One of the other things that David and Sylvia mentioned in their recent email to us was that David's father used to be a horticulturalist, and indeed an award-winning horticulturalist from this very garden. So I'm not saying I'm ever going to be award-winning, but David and Sylvia, David, hope to do your father proud. Now, this soil, very free draining and well drained, and there is some roots, some grass roots in here, and that will provide a good medium for growing on my vegetables. And I did just see somewhere a little bug. There's a tiny little bug there, can you see? I don't know what that's for, but it just proves that life exists everywhere, even in the soil beneath our feet. Unfortunately, whilst my back is turned, that will probably be eaten by a robin, the gardener's friend. They're always around here in the trees. I also noticed a worm. So again, we are full of life in this lovely, friable earth. There's another little bug. Can you see it there? I don't know if my camera will focus on that, but more bugs. Millions and millions of organisms and microorganisms in this wonderful soil. And they are the lifeblood of the garden, and they are the bottom end of the food chain, which the middle and the top of the food chain depends on. So it's important that we protect them. Let me go and get another barrel load of soil. By not digging, it is supposed to suppress weeds, because the act of digging releases seeds in the soil that may have been dormant there for years and years. And by releasing them, by digging them, you bring them to life. So by leaving them in place, it suppresses the weeds. And indeed, by continuing with the no-dig theory over the years, what you would do is you would just add more compost and organic matter onto the top of your existing bed, and those weeds that are there, by continually getting mulched and smothered, will become weaker and weaker and eventually die off. And the ones that are there are easier to dig up because they're not deep rooted. Another one of the perceived benefits of no-dig gardening is the fact that you're leaving carbon locked up in the earth. The earth is one huge carbon sink. You probably know that if you've read about peat bogs. And similarly, this earth is tying in and locking in carbon, so by leaving it there, you're not releasing it into the atmosphere. And nature is a powerful force, but it's also very finely balanced. And the ecosystem beneath my feet has already found its balance, it's already there. So by digging it, you're destroying that balance. Conversely, the benefits of not digging it, in other words, no-dig gardening, is that you're leaving that balance intact and in place. I'm feeling quite good about digging the soil here, because not only am I creating a no-dig veg plot, I'm also at the same time creating a wildlife pond. So it's a win-win. The veg seedlings which I'm about to transplant into this no-dig veg plot are actually part of an experiment which I'm conducting, where I bought some seeds from Aldi. In fact, I spent only £2.97 on 3 packets of seeds. You can watch the video, I'll post a link above this one. And the objective is to see how much value I can get from that £3 bag of seeds. And I thought that would be a useful experiment to conduct in the current times, because in the UK we have, as many other parts of the world has, a cost of living crisis. So I figured if we can find ways of creating more value for our money and creating our own food, it will be a good experiment to conduct. Bacteria and the microorganisms in the soil, which munch away at things in the soil by excreting their poo. That poo fertilises the soil, and the fertilised soil in turn helps to grow the plants which we then eat. So it's a virtuous cycle, and there is something incredibly therapeutic and life enhancing about just getting my hands into this soil. In fact, I'm going to take my gloves off and feel it. It's just wonderful. Look, there's a bit of clay. It doesn't matter where I dig in a garden, I always find willow pattern pottery. Anyway, let me put my glove back on and go and get a few more barrow loads. Apparently, in terms of maintenance with a no-dig garden plot, all you do is just add to the top of it every year with more mulch and more organic matter. You don't dig it over, you just continue weeding it. The weeds come out easily because it's soft, friable earth that you've tended to, and you just add more organic matter and grow into the top. And I was just watching one of Charles Dowding's videos, and again I would urge you to check out his channel. And he's doing an experiment currently where he compares dig gardening to no dig gardening, and I think the conclusions he's drawing are quite striking in terms of the benefits and the extra productivity he's getting from his no-dig plots, and also the amount of fewer weeds there are in the no-dig side of the garden. So what's that? Barrow load number 4, possibly number 5, and I'm very grateful and thankful that my soil is very easy to dig, but having soil which is easy to dig is not necessarily always a good thing. I can tell already from this how little moisture that's retaining, just simply by how quickly it's drying out in the heat of the sun. And of course, plant roots won't appreciate that. They need some organic matter. So I think it's time now, and I'm feeling like I ought to go and speak to my neighbour and see if I can get some well-rotted manure. There's a little bug, I'll just cover that little bug up. And add it to this soil. And by adding the well-rotted manure, it will feed it, it will mulch it, and it will aid moisture retention. I am incredibly blessed with my neighbours. On one side we have Rod and Vix with 7 ponies, and therefore we get a great supply of well-rotted manure, and I'm just going to dig down at the back here for the good stuff. And on the other side we have Mark and Leslie, who have hens and ducks, so we get a regular supply of fresh eggs. So I'm determined to return the favour by supplying some lovely veg and some salad when it comes to harvest time. So there's some nice well-rotted stuff down beneath. You can see it's got a different colour to the fresh stuff. So the horses and nature have already started the process of that becoming incredibly nutrient rich and water retentive plant food. When I asked my neighbour if I could have this, I said to him, "Are you sure you've got enough?" He said, "I've got 7 polo ponies." He said, "I can produce more of this stuff than you'll ever need." Fair point. Let's get it back to the cottage. Let me tell you how I'm feeling as I bring this first load of manure down. I'm really quite excited. So I'm going to add that to that. The idea of actually taking a tiny little fragment, almost a piece of dust which is a seed, and turning it into something which you can eat, which has got real value to it, and which grows in front of your eyes, is really wonderful for me. I'm just going to very gently turn that in to the soil where it can start doing its wonderful work. I reckon I'll probably need about 5 or 6 or 7 of these barrow loads of manure in this soil, and probably another similar amount, 5 or 6 loads of soil over here. At which point I will then be able to start migrating the veg seedlings from my miniature veg plot. So there we go, my first ever Charles Dowding no-dig veg plot. On top of the cardboard I added 5 or 6 barrow loads of topsoil from the wildlife pond that I'm digging. Then I went down to my neighbour's paddock and took 4 or 5 barrow loads of well-rotted manure. Forked it all together, raked it, forked it again, and then watered it all in thoroughly. And that is now ready to receive my little vegetable seedlings. Whilst I've had to do a lot of digging to get to this point, the digging in the future should be restricted. I will probably have to just dig on top some more organic material. And I've got plenty of access to organic material because of my neighbour's ponies. And I'm also going to create a little compost heap down here in this corner of the garden. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do hit the like button. And also, please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Don't forget to hit the notifications bell so that you find out about updates to this and other projects in my garden at Rose Cottage. And of course, do contribute by commenting in the box below this video. What tips or advice would you give to anyone who's considering no-dig gardening, or who, like me, is a beginner with vegetable gardening? I'm always learning, and therefore I'm always happy to receive tips and advice. Join me next time when I will be planting my vegetable seedlings into this and watching them grow. And I'll see you soon.